everybody. Thanks so much for jumping into another episode of the Chapel Plus podcast. My name's John Cook, and I'm so glad to be with you today, along with some friends, as we continue our conversation in our series, Disciple DNA. For the last number of weeks, our church has been walking through a series talking about that, what it looks like to be a disciple of Jesus, and some specific areas, topics, and focuses that I think have been helpful, encouraging, and true. And so today we're going to continue along that vein. Let me tell you who we have around the table, and then we'll dive in. To my right, I have Edwin Perez.
How's it going, everyone?
And then straight across from me, Sam Snell.
How are you?
And to my left, my favorite person at the table, my wife, Leslie.
Hi.
All right. And as I said, we have continued to be walking through this series. This past Sunday, whenever you're listening to this, Pastor Jerry continued in that series talking about disciple making, what it looks like to be a disciple maker. It was Mother's Day, so maybe before we get all the way into the content there, with my wife to my left here, the mother of my 4 children, it was a good day at our church. I was really, it was fun. I feel like I was running around a little bit at this campus here at the Crosspoint campus. We gave away an entire field of flowers. I mean, I don't know how we sourced all those, but how many flowers did we actually have? Was it a lot? Like thousands, right?
I want to say like 2,000 maybe.
I mean, and between all 4 campuses.
Yeah.
I don't know why that number jumps out, 2,000, but
I picked up a bunch of these, I think they were carnations. Is that right? I'm not very good with flowers.
Me neither. I jack up the names of them all the time.
I wanted it to be personal, so I grabbed this bunch of flowers, and I was, as moms were standing in our worship center, I was walking up and saying, Happy Mother's Day, and Happy Mother's Day. And then I pulled one out of the bunch, and it was just a stem. There was no flower on the top of it. And I was like, I'm so sorry. I'll be right back. And so made sure they got their flowers. So
that's great.
Did you get a flower, though? Did you get one?
I did.
We sat in both services, so you got 2 flowers?
I did, but then I did give one away to somebody who also gave theirs away to someone.
See?
It was meaningful.
That's really
nice.
That's good.
Like
That's
a
great.
Spiritual parent, a spiritual mom got one from me.
That's great.
So.
Well, I hope any moms that are listening had a good Mother's Day, got to celebrate. I know that it is, we always talk about the uniqueness of that day and mixed emotions and those things. So, hopefully wherever you land in that, you had the opportunity to celebrate and or be encouraged in those things. But the message from yesterday, though, this past Sunday was really great. And it, as we were saying before we started recording, it was just really on the nose, pointed. I mean, it really, I think the takeaway was, this is something, this command of Jesus to go and to make disciples is a command. And the question was, what are you going to do with that? Are you going to be obedient or are you not? And so maybe just before we dive into some of these things, guys, anything that stood out to you, any major takeaways that you felt like you're just still thinking about chewing on at the conclusion of that day?
Yeah, I think for me, one of them is just like, okay, if the definition of a disciple is someone who makes disciple makers, that it's just a good self-reflection question on, am I really a disciple if I am not making more disciple makers? So I think it's just a good question to ask ourselves is, where in our lives are we discipling others?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was thinking about it too. I really appreciated how Pastor Jerry talked about looking at the places that we're already serving, looking at the places where we're already engaging in, and determining, how we can make disciples in those spaces. It's not this whole other thing of, here's the checkbox to be able to make sure that we're living this out. Okay, as it is, related to other things that we're doing. I think we have to really think about how we embrace disciple making holistically in terms of our whole lives, to think of the people, the relationships that are right in front of us. So I was really grateful for that, and thinking, just even reframing some areas that I'm engaging in and people I'm connecting with, and how I can live out that command.
Yeah, that's really good. I think one thing that stuck out for me yesterday as Pastor Jerry was preaching was just the fact that if you're even just 2 steps ahead of someone, that's a call to disciple someone else. And I think for me, my age and just my season of life, just being young, I often use the excuse of my age to not, be fully invested in every part of disciple making. But the fact is there's someone that's my age, 21, that is brand new to the faith, brand new to Christianity. And my call isn't to be this seasoned expert believer, a professional Christian, but my call is to just take them alongside, hold their hand, walk with them. And as Pastor Jerry said, if you're 2 steps ahead, they can walk behind you. And so that was really encouraging to me.
That was actually a follow-up conversation I had with our daughter, who's 13, yesterday, about that, because it's been really cool. She's been telling all of her friends at school how much she loves coming to church, how much she loves youth group, and enough that they are all wanting to come. And so she's had at least 2 of them come and 2 more that really are trying to figure their schedules out to get here. And that was one of the things that we had talked about was, hey, you're still learning too, and to bring them alongside you and you guys can learn together, but you're a few steps ahead of them, And so, that was a great practical way of explaining that even to our 13-year-old.
Yeah, I think that, you mentioned, Sam, excuses. And I think that Pastor Jerry covered that, the 4 different excuses that he outlined. Maybe it's this, maybe it's not my gift. Maybe it's not my job, it's God's. Maybe it's a job for the professionals. Maybe it's not the right time. And each of those, he unpacked some of those things. I do wonder if that is part of it. I think I can think back in my life to times where I've thought, maybe this isn't my responsibility. This morning, what came out of my mouth as I was talking about this is this phrase I've come back to before, that there are people that I feel like God has just given me responsibility for. Yeah. And I think the more that we're aware of those things, the more that we're sensitive to who we have in our proximity. Disciple making can feel more complicated than I think it has to be. It can feel like I'm supposed to go and recruit a bunch of people through like cold call sales or something like that, and instead we open our eyes just for a minute and realize, just like you said with our daughter, she's going to school with these students. And so these are people that God's put in her path. For us, it's definitely been in our neighborhood, but it's also been unique circumstances where through whatever relationship or through whatever connection, I just know that God has really made it clear that this person's my responsibility. And so I start to be able to share and be able to engage. And that aspect of it, I think, takes away this pressure that sometimes these excuses come from, this pressure that says, well, I have to teach them in a certain way. I have to, have some sort of script that I follow, right? So,
like for me, so I'm a small group leader on Wednesday nights at Chapel Students and for 9th grade girls. And so at times there can be 20 girls in the room, and there's a bunch of us leaders, but he has opened doors with only a small handful to be walking more closely alongside. And, those have been evident, as to like, okay, I can't be everything to everyone in this group, but, within certain ones, it's like, you form little different relationships and they come to you for different things. And, those are the ones that I start to feel more responsibility for because he's kind of opened those doors of communication even within a group of girls that I'm essentially trying to, walk alongside all of them, but like to be a lot closer to just a few.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, to think about the reality of that, I mean, Jesus had that, right? Yeah,
he did.
Peter, James, and John. I mean, you look at 3 out of the 12 that he poured into even more. And you look at the pillars that they were in the early church. So I think even when we think about discipleship, disciple making, it's okay to be able to think of, okay, we have certain people in our circles that there's a little bit more responsibility for life on life. And that's great. And I think we should embrace that. And sometimes there's a seasonality to that. There's, maybe for a certain season you invest more into a certain person, but hopefully the end goal is that they are making disciples, right? So that can change.
And when
we're
working together, I think in the body, we kind of talked about this earlier today too. It's a collective effort, like we aren't solely responsible necessarily for each individual. There's usually multiple people pouring into that person, or they can pick up where you left off and things like that.
Yeah, I want to get to there was a portion of the message. And again, if you're listening to this podcast and you didn't listen to the message, you should probably pause this, go listen to the message. You'll know better what we're talking about here. But Pastor Jerry talked about, the ways we can know that a disciple is made. I do want to get to that. But first, I want to talk a little bit about, Edwin, you said, there are people who are closer to us, and you guys were just talking about maybe some that are closer than others. I want to talk about parenting for a second, because obviously that's one that it's kind of obvious. Leslie and I have 4 children. That's the inner circle for us. Right?
That's a big task.
Pretty
right there.
obvious responsibility that we have. Edwin,
Absolutely.
you have kids as well, and so we're in different seasons, even in terms of age.
Right.
Pastor Jerry said, as disciple-making parents, we cannot embrace the ways of the world, and he used that really good visual of drinking liquids. Some liquids in your home are digestible and safe and good. Some, like antifreeze and rubbing alcohol, and I forget what other things you use, but
a lot of those things
clearly toxic to our kids.
Yeah, and we have locks on the certain drawers so that our kids don't go in and drink those liquids. So
right. So maybe for a minute, just talk about in your home, what are some of the ways that you've, how old are your kids now right now?
So Penelope is 3,
Yeah.
and Ezra's 10 months.
Yeah, that's awesome. So
they're moving.
Ezra obviously is already into scripture memorization.
Oh, he is. I mean, the book of Ezra he has memorized. So,
exactly.
come on.
But yeah, what does that look like for you guys as far as setting up patterns or, rhythms that are allowing for there to be a discipleship culture in your home?
Yeah, I mean, and always learning and growing in some of those ways too, based on where they're at, what they're doing. But a couple of things that we do is we read the Bible. There's a children's Bible that we have, and we read that every night. And Penelope's engaged in that, and really cool to be able to see her excitement to read the Bible, and especially Queen Esther, because she's in the princess time
It's a
in
good
her
reminder.
life.
The Bible's got great, even better than Disney princesses.
Oh, yeah, it is.
She's still in that phase of wanting to wear the princess dress after her bath.
Oh, yeah. I mean, princess dresses have to go on. But it's funny because she'll start to tell the stories to us and read them to us. And Elsa makes her way into the story of Esther and Haman and all of this stuff. Or Haman makes his way into Elsa and Anna. So just cool, though, to be able to see that. And, even just teaching her how to pray. And Val and I love music, and, we'll blast worship songs and dance and also just create an excitement around the things of God, and keeping them engaged in church. And I love that when they're at church, I love seeing them run around and having them have their own friends, and making this feel like it's their place as well, which is a huge thing to make church and being a part of that something that they're excited about is special. So those are just a couple of quick things offhand that we do, and of course always growing in those spaces, but great to see some of those things catch on too, even at an early age.
Yeah,
So,
no, it's good. And
great.
the reason I asked is because I think it's a good reminder that they're young.
Yep.
And so there's an element where you probably could say, hey, they're too young.
No,
or maybe we're
starts
not.
now.
But if you don't, then you've really done what was talked about in the message. You've left it up to them.
And here's just a quick encouragement and just a reminder. Penelope, she's 3, but she can sing and know the lyrics and movie scenes to different Disney princess movies, right? And so how much more, right, should we be thinking about those things from a discipleship standpoint? She can catch on to worship songs. She can catch on to scripture stories. And those are things that we want to be able to do.
I think we underplay that sometimes. We think that kids maybe need a little bit more watered down version of stuff, but I think that we can teach them more than what we think that they can know.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Again, as people, we are natural evangelists. We will evangelize the things that we care the most about. And so, man, like when my boys were real little, I'm like, I got to get them into, like superhero stuff. Like I want them to be Star Wars fans. I want to do whatever, And so I'd pump it up, hey guys, let's sit down and watch this, We have to think the same way about the most important things, and
even when, my wife was singing at the Crosspoint campus yesterday, and just having them pay attention to mom, right? Like even the things that, Val and I do from even a service standpoint, if we can teach our kids to say, hey, mom and dad, we've given our lives to this, but also, our lives at home hopefully speak testimony to the public life too, and that's what hopefully helps us draw them into that. So,
absolutely.
So anyway, those are just some things that we try to be intentional about.
Yeah.
And then, go ahead, Tim.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, and I think for our kids who are a little bit older, we're starting to see some of this pattern emerge. It's been encouraging. The three things that Pastor Jerry talked about, how you can know that you've made a disciple. One was identification, that there's someone who is identifying with the things of God, that they have said, I am a Christ follower. Two, that they're walking in obedience, that they're doing the things that Jesus commanded us to do, to the degree of their maturity and all those things, right? And then three, that they're reproducing, that they're sharing with others and they're discipling people. And so, in our family, with our kids, we've had, we certainly haven't done it perfect, but we have tried to create a home environment where we speak the things of Jesus, where we share the truth of Jesus, where we're talking about the truth of the gospel in everyday conversations. We've talked about this on this podcast before, I think, but whether it's car rides or whether it's bedtime or whether it's all those things, they're both involved in the things here at the church. But I think the most influential pieces are, again, that regular evangelism, that regular engagement of conversation.
And that they see that you are doing the things that you're talking about.
Yes.
You can't just say, do what I say and not what I do, but your words have to match your actions.
Right. And my point is that, we've got little guys. I mean, little, and my oldest is 14, my youngest is 7, and everywhere in between there. So they're new in their faith and they're new in this journey. And so everything's going to look new and young and all that kind of stuff. But, I've got a 7-year-old who is now saying that he's made a decision to follow Jesus. And so that's so exciting this year, and we didn't force that on him. We didn't say that you have to if it's a certain age or whatever. And we'll see what those, how those seeds take root and how they sprout. But that's super encouraging. There's an identification piece there. Our kids are, at differing maturities, walking in obedience, learning what it looks like to follow in the way of Jesus. And now we've got our daughter who's inviting, friends from school to come with her to youth group and sharing about Jesus in her different spaces. So, I think the reason I bring up that is obviously for those who are parents, that's important. But I think it's a good reminder for all believers that you engage with people where they're at. They are immature, right? They're new to faith. And so do you feel equipped to be able to be a disciple maker? Do you have the ability, the skill, the knowledge, all those things? And like Jerry said on Sunday, if you're 2 steps ahead of somebody, you can share with them, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And if you're listening to this podcast and maybe you kind of share the same story that I do of not coming to faith in the Lord until, your teenage years, you weren't raised in a Christian home. I would say, as Leslie said, like the sayers and the doers, right? As believers, if you desire discipleship and you lack that growing up, I would say in your church space, find those sayers, but also find the ones that are going to say it and do it. Right. So find a spiritual mother, a spiritual father, those that can raise you up, that next year you can hand them a flower in the atrium. Right. Yeah. So just want to leave that encouragement to say, if you weren't raised in a Christian home, that you can seek that out here at our church. We have so many, I can attest to it, spiritual fathers in my life that have for sure raised me in the ways in which the Lord wants me to go.
Absolutely. Yeah, spiritual mothers and fathers. That's a big deal in the life of the church and disciple making, and to be able to stand on some of those shoulders is
not that they're going to raise you.
No, right. But
they're going to raise you up in the ways in which you should be walking.
Sometimes it's just how they model the Lord and how they've led their homes and their families. Consistent obedience for a really long time.
Yeah. Yes.
Just is admirable. And it's something that I'm so grateful for, and even if you're listening to, by the way, and maybe you're hearing some of the stories of some of the intentionality of discipleship in your home, and maybe you're just sensing, oh man, I wish I would have done this or that. Let me just encourage you. It's never too late to do something.
No.
Right?
Yeah.
Just do something.
Yeah.
Maybe just create a rhythm of prayer. Maybe just talk to your kids, or maybe if you have adult children, just talk to them about what the Lord is doing in your life, or creating just an atmosphere where you can begin to normalize talking about Jesus, as best as you can. It's never too late to do something. So just hear that and just be encouraged with that too.
I feel like that's been our biggest success, is just bringing the kids alongside of what we're doing, what we're learning, what God's teaching us, showing them that we need Jesus too, just as much. and how we are relying on him. And, when they're struggling with things, pointing them to, okay, what does God's word say about it? What, you go pray about it. You tell us what is God telling you what to do in this situation. I feel like, the more we just are open, even and honest with where we're at, has been huge in seeing the kids see how important it is in their own life, and to be able to want to do that and then learn themselves how to do that. So,
well, again, that translates, I think, to anybody you come in contact with that God has opened the door for you to be a disciple maker of.
Yeah.
I mean, I can think of a whole bunch of examples where that's exactly what we've done is this person comes into your life, and as opposed to feeling like there's this pressure toward a curriculum or toward a process, you just begin to share with them, invite them into what you're already doing. Hey, I want to share with you what I read today. I want to talk to you about what God's done in my life. I want to, and you're going to get some questions that maybe you're surprised by. Like, man, will you teach me how to pray? Or, hey, will you show me where that is in the Bible? Or, hey, why is it that Christians believe this? And I think you'd be amazed, actually, that if you're walking with the Lord, you know these things. You're doing these things. And so there's this pressure that gets applied sometimes to process. Maybe just guys, talk out, everyone around the table here, talk out, what are some practical things that you've done, some easy entries that you've had with people who you've gotten to disciple, you've gotten to sit with, to take some of the pressure off from thinking it's this really formulaic, really kind of structured thing.
Yeah, here's a great example. So dudes out there, if you get your hair cut, rhythmically or whatever, 30 minutes or so, I pay somebody and they have to listen to me. It's a great opportunity though. Every month, I sit with a barber and, but just, he's had a curiosity of what I do, of faith in Jesus. And it's actually been a really cool story of how God's been pursuing him. And when I started, seeing him to get my haircut, he was already primed. God was already working in his heart. And really, once a month, it's an opportunity to just check in. Hey, where are you at? What is God teaching you? He started to read his Bible. A coworker of his started attending the chapel, which is great. So he's talking. The barber next to us is talking about the sermons and so I'm talking to him as my barber's cutting my hair about the messages and all that stuff. So I think just embracing places you already go and the people that are right there in front of you. I mean, I got 2 young kids, so man, it's hard to find the time right now to have a bunch of people over our house and to do a whole bunch of things. And I'm sure that's different seasons of 4 different capacities with some of that. And so I've had to wrestle through that a little bit of like, what does that look like in my season right now? And how can I embrace it? And I think engaging with where we are and bringing people alongside and looking at some of the opportunities that are right in front of me and just seeing, hey, there's people that need Jesus here.
Yeah, that's really good. I think I would agree with everything that you said. I find it most helpful to find the consistent and constant things that I'm already doing and implement discipleship into those things. Especially, I have a lot of friends that are unbelievers, right? Outside of my community group, outside of a church context, I have a lot of friends that aren't believers because we grew up together and I wasn't a believer and we ran in those circles. And one thing I've noticed is if I find something that they like to do and I invite them into that and I say, hey, I know you like to go golfing or you like to, go to this restaurant, I will simply just extend an invitation and say, hey, do you want to go here this week? Let's just hang out for a bit. It doesn't have to be this formal, sit in a coffee shop, open up a Bible, open up a journal. It can be a simple conversation around who Jesus is. And we were even talking this morning about my table at our staff meeting. We were just talking about finding the right or creating the right to actually have these conversations, right? And so to start just natural relationships, not a relationship of, hey, this is what the Bible says, this is what you're doing wrong, and this is how you have to get it right. Instead, just starting a simple conversation of saying, hey, let's just start with let's start with a relationship, go into this conversation. I think that's really helpful. So I just find consistent things that I'm already doing and just implementing that into the natural flow. I mean, I just took a friend grocery shopping because I just needed to get my groceries bought and done and had to get that over with. And he wanted to hang out for the day. So I said, hey, meet me at Wegmans tonight. Let's just walk around, do my grocery shopping. We can talk then. I think and it also invites them into just your everyday life.
Yeah.
You don't look like this formal professional Christian. Like, hey, I got to do my dishes. I got to do some yard work. Just invite them into those circles.
Yep. Yeah, and I think, if you're in the place where your move is to invite them to church, to bring them with you to a worship service, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
I would, though, encourage you to pray for some courage to have conversations beyond that. Right. Because sometimes I think, as wonderful as that is and how God can definitely use that and work in that, at the very least, be willing to follow up with them and say, hey, what'd you think about the message? Or are you coming again next week? I think the desire maybe to want to do that can come from feeling like it's not my gift. It's not my ability. I'm not sure that I'm confident. And Sam, you just said it, the relational capital that grows from you saying, I want to share with you what Jesus has done in my life. I want to walk with you in this journey. I don't know that I can fully articulate how exciting and joyful it is to walk with someone and watch them grow and see budding fruit in their life. And you don't want to miss out on that, right?
It's amazing. Yeah.
It's so cool. Even just one of the girls in my small group, just watching her over the last year or so, just like beaming and just there's such a transformation I've seen. And it's been multiple people and situations pouring into her, but you can start to see gifts developing and fruit developing, and she's looking for opportunities to share her faith, and she knows that she's like, I need to be more bold like so-and-so who's only a couple grades older than her,
right.
And so seeing other people doing it is spurring her on to want to do it. And it's just like super, super encouraging to us to watch other people do that. And then it encourages all of us to want to do it more. And that's kind of the whole idea, I think, behind the multiplication.
Yep. I think you can look for a framework. Again, back to the passage that Pastor Jerry was preaching out of Matthew 28. Jesus says, go and make disciples, right? Teach them to obey and baptize them in the name of the Father, Son, and Spirit. There is this element of go and do it. Like, go find the people who I've put in your place. Go and find them and identify and engage with them. And then, like, share with them the life of Jesus that you already know, and find ways to involve them, include them, to identify them in the church. Even you talked about spiritual gifts. Sometimes as you get into conversations with people, it can be exciting to say, all right, cool, you're a follower of Jesus. You believe the things that I believe. We share this faith. Now let's figure out where you fit. Now let's figure out how you can grow. That could be a really fun conversation.
It's awesome. Yeah, it's a great thing. Yeah, and even as you're listening here and as we're wrapping up, just our encouragement again to you is to do something, right? Jesus commanded this of us to go and make disciples. So we don't want to sit back on that, but instead we want to embrace that together to see and to better sense the people right in front of us where God wants us to include them and perhaps what we're doing, but more than that, to teach them about Jesus, to show them about Christ. Even the Apostle Paul said, imitate me as I follow Christ. And may that be true of us. May even our lives, may they be worthy of imitation. Not perfect, but worthy of imitation, where people can look at us and there's fruit because we're connected to the vine. And so we leave you with that today. And even think about this from a macro level too, right? That if you're listening, if you're a follower of Jesus, you're a disciple, you're a follower of Christ because somebody embraced their call as a disciple maker. Somebody embraced that, which has led to you knowing Jesus. And you can trace that all the way back to Jesus, which is an incredible thought.
Yeah.
And it's not just our church that's on mission. We individually have to be on mission.
That's right.
To reach every man, woman, and child.
Exactly. And so may that give us fuel to embrace the mission of God together and make disciples, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. So thank you so much for listening today. And it's been our joy to host this conversation. If you have any questions or if you need to follow up in any way, you can certainly email us via chapelplus@thechapel.com. Just had to look over to my friends to make sure that was right.
You got it, man.
I think
You
I got
it.
the head nod, which means that's right. But thank you so much for listening today. And again, let's embrace this together and step out in faith in certain areas, and let's see what God does, because he'll always meet us in obedience. So let's live that out together and embrace it. God bless you.